for the voice and technology group at Cisco Systems in Galway. We make software, we make unified communication software for the enterprise, kind of like Skype for businesses. I've also worked in advertising, I've worked in product design, I've worked in architecture. And they all have kind of their unique way of dealing with user experience. But the one thing that they all have in common is that they're all designed to make money. And you guys who are in college, you're going to be shocked when you graduate and you go out and you get your first job that you're going to be expected to make money for the people that you work for. Because when you're in college, you have all these great ideas and you're encouraged to explore them, and you don't have to worry about things like constraints and product deadlines and realities of manufacturing techniques. But then when you get your job, those things do matter. And my first job, I was given these problems to solve, and I solved them, and I came up with these beautiful solutions. But we couldn't implement them because they wouldn't work within the constructs of the business. And I said, look, I solved your problem, it's beautiful, this is the solution. But user experience suffers at the hands of greed, right? So greed is good when you're a shareholder, okay? When you're looking to make money, when profit margin matters, greed is good. But we know that greed is really not good, right? We know from a user experience perspective, user experience suffers when greed is the paramount concern, when the bottom line matters. When decisions are being made on profit margin and not on user experience, a little piece of your customer dies every time that happens, which is very sad. So the other end of that spectrum is empathy, right? Is don't worry about the bottom line. The bottom line doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is getting to know your customer, getting to know your user, understanding what makes them tick, what their needs are. If it takes 2 years to figure this out, who cares? So fine, so forget the bottom line, forget greed, we're just going to go with empathy. Well, congratulations, because 2 weeks from now you're going to be out of business. So is there a happy medium? Is profit or value more important? Is it business or is it personality? Is it the production team or the user? And the answer to those questions is yes. It's a partnership between the people who make products and services and the people who consume them. It's like mutually assured value. So when the customer is getting what they want, they give back to the people who are giving them the product. And then that means that the person who is creating the product can then give back more value to the customer. But what is value? Can we define value? Well, value is really what is valuable. So from a business perspective, these are quantifiable things, right? It's money and time and productivity and success and all these things. Like we can fill in Excel spreadsheets with this stuff, right? But from a user experience perspective, it's these ethereal things. It's happiness and fun and surprise. And you can't measure these things, but you know it when you see it. So how do we find the balance? How do we merge those two worlds so that everybody's happy? Okay? Well, some brands figure this out, and some brands have failed miserably. You can see our good friends from AIB all the way. They're even off the chart, right? They suck. So if you have your horizontal axis of emotion, so you hate these people, and these people you'll tattoo them on your ass because you really like them. And scale, these are the small guys, the guys with low market cap, and then you go all the way up to the top, and those are the big, huge players. And what you want to do is you want to trend from down here up to there. You want to be like Apple, right? Apple, who, if you have the iPhone 3, you'll go wait online for a week for the iPhone 4, even though it's a marginal upgrade from what you have, because you love Apple so much. So that's where everybody wants to be. It's not always possible, but that's where everybody shoots for, right? So I want to talk about architecture for a second. I think architecture is probably the most visceral form of user experience out there. It's just primeval, right? So this is Frank Lloyd Wright. He's one of my heroes. I love him. I don't know if you've ever been lucky enough to walk into one of the houses he's designed, but it's like a religious experience. It really is. I'm not exaggerating. You walk in and it just takes your breath away. But what he did was he was not just a design god in the abstract sense. He was literally a design god. He played a deity when he designed for his clients. He would design flatware and clothes and upholstery and curtains that had to be in the house when he came to visit them. So they would have to dress up in clothes that he designed. He would put furniture in rooms before the roof was put on. He would lower them in and then put the roof on the house so that the furniture couldn't be moved out of the rooms. So he would design chairs and tables that fit together like jigsaw puzzles so that you couldn't use that chair with a different table and you couldn't get rid of the chairs and be able to sit at that table. I mean, he was quite insane. But again, when you look at his stuff, it is brilliant. And one thing I always say, every time I go to one of his houses, I walk out and I go, man, I can't imagine living in one of those places. And the fact is that neither could his clients. Most of the houses have been turned into museums because they're not fun to live in. They're not homes, which is what people want, right? You want a house that you can make your own. But it wasn't your own. It was Frank Lloyd Wright's home. He was letting you live in it. You know, it was his world. You're just a guest. So there was no user experience. There was Frank Lloyd Wright's user experience, and not the people who were paying him for the user experience that they were expecting, right? And we all kind of do it in our own way. So we get a project brief, and you have to solve this problem, and we go, how am I going to solve that problem? What are my solutions going to be? Who am I going to design this for? And we apply our prejudices to these problems. We do personas and we go out and we talk to people. But at the end of the day, what we're getting paid for is to make decisions. And you can't hide those prejudices, nor should you probably. But I spent 8 years in a bunch of different colleges, and I could not identify the president of any of those universities. Yet when you go onto every university website, there's the letter from the president. Why? Nobody cares about that. But it's because there's some stakeholders, the president probably goes, I got to put my letter out there because everybody can't wait to read what I have to say, and that's just nonsense. So let's talk about cake. I love cake. I'm sure a lot of you guys love cake too. But the problem with cake many years ago was that it took a long time to make. It was messy, you had to get a lot of ingredients, you was pouring and mixing and doing all this stuff, and it would take a long time, and so you wouldn't make a lot of cake. But you want cake because it's so good. So Betty Crocker comes up with instant cake mix, right? And it's so easy. All you got to do is add water. So Betty Crocker goes, people are going to love this. Easy cake. You just add water, you mix it up, and you cook it. The problem was nobody bought it. They couldn't figure it out. Everybody loves cake. This cake is easy to make. Why are people not buying our cake? So they did some research, and they found out, and they had to reconfigure their recipe a little bit, and this is what they did. They added an egg. There was not enough emotional investment before that egg was added. People would say, oh, it's water in a cake mix, it's lazy, I'm a crappy parent if I do that. Put an egg in the mix, you're parent of the year. The point of it is that breakthrough innovation is incremental. It's the big aha moment was the instant cake mix, but nobody wanted the instant cake mix. Once you added the egg, then everybody wants the instant cake mix. It's the details that tend to be important. Yes, the big aha moments are important. Those are the things that grab people's attention. But for people to invest themselves in your user experiences, you have to sweat the details. So, even at the iPhone, look at the iPhone. The iPhone didn't create a new product category. It may have perfected a product category as close as you could come. And that's because they sweat the details. Their product team goes with a jeweler's loupe on the screen of the iPhone and checks every individual pixel. Now, if one of those pixels were off, would you know? You wouldn't. But they would know. And when you apply that level of detail, of ass-clenching detail to your products that you're making, you're bound to come out with good stuff. Talk about a mop very quick. This is a mop that was designed by, I wrote her name down, Romy Han in South Korea. Korea tends to be traditionally a patriarchal culture, right? And they have this thing called the andal, which is a hearth that lives under the house that would start fires and it radiates heat under the floorboards. And they have a communal living space where people would spend their day, they would eat there on the floor, and then they would sleep on the floor at night. And what that meant was that the woman of the house spent all of her free time just about cleaning that floor, because people would spend time in the day, then they would eat, she'd have to clean the floor before bed, then in the morning she'd have to clean the floor again. So it was they were subjugated women in South Korea for a long time because it took up so much of their time on their hands and knees scrubbing the floor. So what Romy did was she spent about 10 years and she begged and she borrowed money from everywhere that she could to solve this problem because she hated being on the hands and knees scrubbing the floor. And she did it, and she came up with this mop. It's a mop that cleans with steam, it doesn't use chemicals, it does the exact same job, even better than being on your hands and knees and scrubbing the floor. So what she did, she actually changed the culture. Every home in South Korea has one of these now. And women are not on their hands and knees scrubbing floors anymore. She liberated women in a very real sense. And an interesting sidebar is she actually changed kind of the business culture of South Korea as well. Before her, there were no women entrepreneurs. It wasn't even thought of to be a woman entrepreneur in South Korea. So she changed the business culture just through a great user experience. She's almost like a rock star in South Korea now. So you can change with a mop. If you can change a culture, I mean, imagine what you can do with something even bigger than that. Like a bike scheme. Right? So this is the bike scheme in Melbourne, Australia. And, so the bike scheme is great. Public bikes, you can rent them. It's great for the environment. It's great for people's health. It cuts down on congestion in the middle of the city. Everybody wins. Win, 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 win. Beautiful. Gotta love it. The problem in Melbourne is that they have a helmet law. And they were renting bikes and they weren't renting helmets. So the first couple of people that rented bikes were riding down the street and they promptly got a summons and a fine for riding a bike without a helmet. So as interaction designers, as user experience practitioners, sometimes we put our blinders on and we get very narrow in our focus, but we have to understand that the things that we design and the things that we do have a much greater impact outside of ourselves, outside of that little product. Like people, what do they wear when they use your product? Where are they? What are they doing? Where are they going? So Melbourne is screwed. But if you went to another municipality where the government didn't care if you fell off a bike and cracked your head open and died, the bike scheme would be a great success. So double bike scheme, hugely successful, no helmet law. It's the detail. It's the very simple details that can make or break a product. It's unfair of us sometimes. Like we sometimes expect our users to adapt to what we want them to do, right? And that's not the way we should be. We should be adapting our products and our experiences to fit their needs. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that way. It's almost a kind of laziness, right? So I have my brother's a doctor, I know a bunch of doctors, and 9 out of 10 doctors agree that the internet sucks because every single day, into their office comes a patient clutching a bunch of papers that they printed off of Google. And, Doc, I got some bad news. I was on diseases.blogspot.com last night and I realized I have beriberi. I've got 2 months to live. And there's a saying, right? Power tends to corrupt, absolute power corrupt absolutely. Well, access to information may make you smart, but unlimited access to unlimited information may make you too smart for your own good. And that's because there's no context to it. We just throw people in the midst of this information and we let them go nuts and they consume it and they have to, and as you were talking about earlier, there's a difference between information and knowledge. And we need to be able to give them the tools and the experiences to be able to frame that information within a knowledge base. And we've created another class, a super class of power users, right? It's not just users anymore. There are users who use a certain amount of features, but we're packing so many features into things that people feel like they're Superman because they have this phone that can do things and I can GPS my coordinates when I'm in McDonald's and it makes me powerful. And it's just a phone. But now everybody has that same phone. So what's the difference? What's the difference between the iPhone and the HTC and the BlackBerry when all of the feature sets are equal? What are we trading on? What are people buying? Yes, 80% of users only use 20% of features, but 10% of that 80% may use 5% of those features, and then 60% may use 30% of those features. It's not the same 20% of the features. People are different. Not everybody is homogenized. So it becomes very, very hard to figure out what specifically should you be putting into your products and your user experiences to make people happy. So there's 2 ways, well, there's probably more, but there's 2 main ways of achieving that. And one is put every fucking thing, right? Just put it. You want You want facial recognition, focus 30 times zoom in your camcorder. You'll never use it, but here you go, it's there. So in case you ever need it, you got it. Sepia tone filters on, you got it. Now what happens is like for the average user, for my mom, she'd be lost with something like this because you have to expose